This year, we learned that you can take human brains, both post-mortem and lab-grown, and put them into a robot, and that robot is capable of learning new skills. Many have expressed the same concern, which is a great deal. Where are the ethics when it comes to this? And I would like to explain that to you and some of the implications. In 2022, Cortical Labs, an Australian company, shocked the world when they claimed sentience in their lab-grown brains who played Pong. And just in case anyone is unfamiliar, you can take skin cells, turn them into stem cells using chemical processes, and turn that into a tiny version of a human brain, a brain organoid. These are largely used as a medical platform, although they've also been used for computation. We saw the birth of the first data centers that run on brain organoids. They're not useful in the same way as a large language model, although they can run robots, and they're much better at spatial recognition, although, you have to feed them and give them antibiotics, and they're quite fragile. They are capable of learning in the period of time that they are alive, and a short lifespan was one of the limiting factors, although they now can be kept alive for 5 years or more, and they can be given a circulatory system, or a little mini spinal cord organoid. They can also be connected to other organoids, or lobbed together, like Legos. This year, though, it was demonstrated that they're capable of goal-directed learning, and that's what they were trying to demonstrate as far as sentience goes in Pong. They're capable of having some kind of a desire. However, it has largely been considered irresponsible to call them sentient or conscious for a variety of reasons. One of them is that it just scares people. But also because both sentience and consciousness are really not scientific questions because you can't really demonstrate it. Researchers have tried for decades to try to figure out how you can demonstrate that consciousness exists, and as AI passes each goalpost, we have to move said goalpost, and we can all just agree that we can't answer the question. It all comes down to I think, therefore I am. You can only know your own internal experience. You can't demonstrate that somebody else is having one. Unfortunately, I do not think that our ability to determine if something is conscious will get better with improved tools. I mean, yeah, you can kind of demonstrate that a coma patient is conscious, and it is very concerning as their little brain organoids start to show more complex brain waves. But I really don't think anyone is going to accept that they are conscious. However, this question gets significantly more concerning as researchers from California, actually, kept a brain alive post-mortem. Yeah, 24 hours within somebody's expiration, they removed the brain, replaced circulation, and gave it a robotic body of sorts. Yes, that machine keeps it alive. It has artificial kidneys, an artificial heart, and artificial lungs. And yes, that tub, that vat, contains the brain. Brain in a vat was just supposed to be a philosophical question. I mean, how can you know if you're really experiencing the world? You are, in your head. You have an interface, like your eyes and your skin, to feel the world. But now it's become significantly more literal. This is where I provide my disclaimer, because yes, it is metabolically alive. They did restore circulation and restore a little bit of cell activity, but it is not conscious, it is not thinking. It is essentially a comatose brain that is barely functional, for now. I would say that these guys were far more responsible than our French group, because this brain is not doing anything, it's not learning anything. It's also heavily sedated just in case there is any possibility of consciousness. But our French scientists decided to take it many steps further and allow it to learn things. Yeah, the one where they took a post-mortem human cortex slice just hours after expiration, put it in an incubator, connected it to a robot arm, and taught it how to play the piano and gave it sensory feedback, and allowed it to learn new songs. There is no information in the paper as to whether or not the original brain knew how to play the piano, but now it does. A man asks a surgeon whether or not he'll be able to play the piano. The surgeon says, yes, of course, and the man says, well, that's great, I couldn't play the piano before. I actually spent many years learning to play the piano, and I have always been terrible at it, so this is probably the only way that I'll ever be able to learn to play the piano. This technology is roughly a year old, and the idea of reviving a human brain was really never considered to be reasonable. No one thought it could be done. There has, however, been a good deal of ethical research done for brain organoids, and everyone's kind of come to the same conclusion. You cannot claim suffering, you cannot claim sentience in a tiny brain, because we simply do not have evidence for it, although I do like to tell people that a lack of evidence is not evidence in itself. Essentially, we cannot know, so we should try to treat them relatively kindly. In other words, try to limit undue suffering. This is one of the reasons that pain research in brain organoids bothers me, because we are specifically causing them physical suffering in order to research them. One principle in ethics of research is that you should try to minimize harm, and if you must cause harm, that should be balanced with the amount of good that can come out of it. When it comes to brain organoids, there's an enormous amount of good that they can do. In animal models, they've been an enormously helpful tool for treating things like strokes and even Parkinson's. They're also a great research model. We can finally research conditions that we never had any way to do otherwise, and they represent a very young brain. This is the same reason why we're kind of doing necromancy with brains. It creates an adult model, because when we are looking at brain organoids, they're essentially applicable to the age that they are at. If you keep them alive for 5 years, they have the same protein expression and gene expression as a 5-year-old child. But adult brains have already experienced a life. They may already have those neurodegenerative conditions, and that allows you to study them. At the same time, we do have a great responsibility to make sure we are not accidentally causing suffering. Now, this stuff really has not hit the news. The preprint that I showed you from France was published literally 2 days ago. Essentially, the public has not had time to be very concerned about the ethics yet, and it's also very difficult to demonstrate any suffering happened. I mean, how? How would we do that? Unless the brain's life starts tapping out, "Help me" in Morse code on the piano. It is just a small piece of brain, and I feel the same need to do that, to walk it back, to try to minimize it, because I don't want people to start running with things that we cannot demonstrate. At the same time, that is a difficult balance to strike, because we really don't know. What does interest me, and perhaps morbidly, is what about a collaboration? Because bexorg does not seem to want to take their brain in a vat off of sedatives right now, but we have demonstrated that adult post-mortem brain could learn new skills. What if we did a whole brain? What could we do then? What if we repaired that brain with brain organoid technology and stem cell technology? What if we could bring it back in a robot? That would sound absolutely insane 10 years ago, and perhaps it still does now, but I'm starting to see the possibilities. What if this technology progresses beyond where it is right now? So to answer the question of how this passed, well, we don't really have many protections on brains. They're pretty much considered other organs. You can treat them roughly the same way that you would any other organ in a scientific study. It also has an enormous potential to do good. I hope that helps. I will absolutely keep you up to date because I am fascinated by this too. Follow for more.